I'm getting loud or
Getting much.
whoa, we were almost recording Saint Anger. Welcome back to Two Mics No Masters. I'm Andy.
I'm Patrick. Today we are talking about bands that were ahead of their time.
I was thinking about what ahead of their time actually means. And I think it means a few things, really. It means playing a style of music that doesn't connect with a large audience. It also means a band that is around in an era that doesn't fit the music style that they are playing, but then decades later it's actually in style.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect definition. You totally nailed that.
To me, like a very influential band was Only Living Witness. Like their sound and vocal delivery was very unique for the time and had an impact on bands for decades. And an underrated band to me is Cast Iron Hike. They just kind of did hardcore the way they wanted to. It was stripped down, heavy, non-typical vocals, and a band that made you not be able to stand still. There was a lot of bands ahead of their time in the early to mid 90s. If they were around today, they would all have been way bigger. Kind of bands like Overcast, Dissolve, Disembodied, Bloodlet, and Damnation AD is just a few examples I have. But
great examples. I also considered particularly Only Living Witness. I didn't think of Cast Iron Hike, but I think that's a great example too. They didn't, at the time they were around playing, both of those bands.
Yeah.
They sounded nothing like their contemporaries. So, they were still playing hardcore shows, but they
right.
Even though they were playing some really heavy music, but very much more groove oriented.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I could see both of those bands being huge now.
Right. Exactly.
I think they would do very well.
Yeah,
just at the time, I don't think people were ready for that, to be honest.
That's a good point, too, that it's not ready for it.
Yeah. I love their particular styles.
I always thought those kind of bands, like if they kind of just like came out now, well, like again, I should say, because they were already bands, but if they kind of like, if record labels signed them and then put them out as if they were a new band, would they catch on? Like, oh, look at this new band. It's like, oh, it's so good,
Yeah.
The same stuff, even.
Yeah, I wonder. We talked to it with that Soul Blind record, right? It's like, it was just made last year, but it heavily draws from 90s rock, particularly, I think, grunge and heavy rock.
Yeah, that's true.
But it still sounds contemporary. It's
funny you say that, because I wonder if they're actually behind their time. Could Soul Blind exist in 1992?
Interesting. I didn't even... It's like a reverse Uno card. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Like if you were to have a time machine and send them back. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Two Mics No Masters time machine.
Exactly.
Send them back to... send them back to... Yeah, that's a great question. They would probably fit right in.
Yeah, I think so too. Because Alice in Chains is very heavy.
Yes.
Plenty of songs that are very heavy.
Yeah. Especially for that time, I thought for what ended up, they weren't mainstream when they first started out, but, for a band that was being played on the radio, I thought they're pretty heavy.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I think of bands, one of the first ones that came to mind was Faith No More. And the reason I said, wasn't the first one that came to mind. Actually, I take that back. Well, I'll circle back to Faith No More. The first band that came to mind, it was Into Another. I think they are underrated and ahead of their time. Even now, like I listen to them now and I still can't put them in I don't know where they fit even now. I don't know what that says. You know, are they too weird?
They're just unique.
Yeah, they are. They are unique.
It's funny though. I wonder if because they're an old school band that has a revival, still plays out, but then they play out with bands that kind of they fit with that are still old school. So they don't really get turned on to newer fans in a way. I wonder if they just kind of did their own thing or if a record label actually put them on the road with a newer band and they opened up for, someone that wasn't around back in the day so they could gain new fans if they would catch on.
That's a great. I didn't consider that either. That's a great question. If they were touring, would they acquire new fans, essentially?
I think so, because if it fits the style of music that, they went on with, I'm trying to think of a not so heavy band that's popular today. And if they went out and opened for them, people would probably be like, oh, wow, this band's really good.
Yeah. And
they'd be shocked to be like, wow, they started in I don't know, I think like 1990 or something like that. But it's like, it's because how do you gain new fans playing with whoever their contemporaries are today that they actually play with? But it's like you can't we already know we like them.
Yeah. And
you go see them, you're like, yeah, I'm already into them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I'd like to believe they would get new fans.
Yeah. But I don't know, because I think they're a band that's actually just good. Like, you know when you see a band, you're like, this band's really good. They're obviously not mainstream, but they have mainstream potential, kind of, in a way. I don't know. There's nothing rough about them that people wouldn't be like, wow. Obviously, the vocals, they can sing. It's like they can play. There's tons of rhythm and melody that would catch on, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think they're a great band. I think, but like I said, I still can't. I listened to them as recently as today, and so I was thinking like I still don't know how to categorize it. It just doesn't.
They kind of fall in the alternative category. It's weird, but post-hardcore,
post-hardcore, metal in places.
Right, that's true.
I also listened to like I was talking about earlier, Voivod. I'm drawing some parallels between those two. Some of the members were in a previous band called Underdog, and they were weird too, and not easily categorized. They weren't huge at the time, but now
after they kind of
they're held
disbanded.
They're held to a different standard.
Just didn't see them. Now they want to see them.
Yes.
So they can play live. There's more need for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
What other bands did you have?
What other bands did I have? Great question. Well, I talk about this band a lot, but this band Quicksand, I think at the time, they were playing a sound that wasn't like anything around them. They were sort of one of the few doing that. And I think they were actually groundbreakers for a lot of the bands that came after that have that sort of post-hardcore, indie, lots of melody and groove and introspective lyrics. Walter is a very talented lyricist. So I think, you can hear their DNA in countless bands that came after them. But at the time, I don't think and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's, maybe they got their due recognition. But it seemed to me that they were underrated. I still talk to people who are like, Quicksand?
Right.
Which surprises me because I thought they were historically, really important.
What record label was Slip on? It was a major label, wasn't it?
Great question. I don't
What's that?
remember.
That wasn't like Mercury or something like that? Or
it might have been. I didn't know this was on the quiz.
I just thought I was talking to a real fan.
Oh, man. That's it. I'm sorry. I'll go home and I'll burn all my shirts. I can't. Dang it. Polydor.
Okay.
So
that's a
pretty major.
Yeah.
It's It's considered a major.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember, people were like, oh, like major label, Quicksand.
Of course, yeah.
But then it turned out to be like what I consider to be a perfect record. And I think a lot of people recognize it as just a really important, influential, and great record.
I had Social D on the new record driving here today. The record ended and it started, playing bands kind of like them. I went to a couple different bands. I'm like, cool, whatever. Then I went to the next song. I didn't know who it was. I'm like, oh, who is this? And I look over. I'm like, oh, I think it's the new Quicksand. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
I never really caught on to me. But I'm like, maybe I'm going to have to check out the new record when it comes out.
You might like it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. That's groundbreaking. Right?
I know. I always like to broaden my musical taste.
That's cool.
We'll see.
I've been broadening my listening quite a bit since we started this.
That's good.
This pod. Yeah. I like it a lot. So now I wanted to mention Faith No More, and I'm not a huge Faith No More fan. I like them. I think they get a lot of good material. They get some tracks. But the reason I wanted to mention them is because I think not only were they underrated at the time, I know they did have a little bit of success, but I think that was limited by they were just doing things that were just at the time seemed kind of weird. And people have a hard time sometimes when stuff is too weird. Like I think people, if it's too outside their norm, I think people just don't, they just have a hard time with it. But with Faith No More, I think, they were mixing elements like metal and funk and rap, pop, alt rock, all within like a single song, and then their album, like we were talking about this a little bit earlier, the album is, it's all over the place. I think people don't know where to put them and how to label them. And because of that, people just didn't, it was just too weird. But I know a lot of people who list this as one of their, or Faith No More as one of their top bands. And so I get that.
It's definitely the Mike Patton cult.
But the reason I mentioned it really is because I think they were super influential in what became nu metal. I think they sort of laid the blueprint for that. Not because I think it sounds like nu metal, but because I think they were mixing genres in a way that really paved the way for those bands.
The album, The Real Thing, the one that Epic is on.
Yep.
I loved that record.
Okay.
I think it's actually a perfect record now that I'm thinking about it. But I remember being so influenced by that record, being like, because obviously the reason I think I bought it is because of Epic. I'm like, oh, cool song, They're mixing rap and it sounded like metal too, so I'm like, cool. And then putting the tape on, because it was the tape back in the day, just being like so intrigued by the different style changes. There's even like, I think a part in there where it sounds like crooner, it's like music. It's like, what is happening? It's like lounge music almost.
Yeah.
But it would change to this atmospheric whatever. But I remember just falling in love with that record. It's so good. But then the next record, I like it. I don't love it as much as, but then they come up with one after that I like better. So they're just so all over the map. Like, is what you're saying.
And I've never, like I said, I've never been a particularly huge fan. I do like them. Yeah. But I think their influence is far more reaching than the attention and notoriety that they got.
Yeah. I think they opened a lot of doors.
Totally. Yeah. Like I said, I don't think nu metal would have progressed the way it did without bands like, Faith No More. So
I would have never made that connection. So interesting.
I started making the connection when I was, following up our nu metal conversation, then also listening to, I went back and listened to Faith No More because it's been a while. And I started to kind of connect the dots a little bit, at least to my ears. That's the way it felt. Another band I want to name or mention really was band Rorschach.
Okay. Wow.
Why I think they were ahead of their time is their music was chaotic, dissonant, and emotionally intense at a time period when most hardcore was still pretty formulaic, and their use of, their sort of angular, sharp riffing and unpredictable structures really sort of laid the groundwork for what later became, more chaotic hardcore and mathcore. I mean, again, to my ears, modern listeners, I think, probably hear them and assume they came later in the hardcore timeline. Like if you didn't know that they were from the 90s, you might think they were later. And so when I listened to the record, I was like, man, I wonder how people would receive them. A lot of people talk about Rorschach and they name drop Rorschach.
Yeah.
But I don't, I had seen them multiple times, and every time there was like tops 50 people at the show. I saw them with a headline, quote unquote, and there was probably like maybe a dozen people there, 20 or less.
Yeah.
Is that because people they didn't understand the band at that time, or was that more of a condition of like hardcore itself?
Probably both.
Yeah, I think Rorschach is one of those bands that, as time went, became more and more popular.
Yeah, for sure. They have like a legend behind them.
Yeah. Again, like a cult status.
Yeah.
They're outstanding, and I see their DNA in a lot of other things that came after it.
Actually, I have a story about an underrated band.
Yeah, man, go off.
That comes to mind. It was one of the early times when I saw Shadows Fall. It was in Brockton, and it was a bunch of other a bunch of hardcore bands. I believe they opened the show. This was around like 1998 when they still had Phil Abonte on vocals. And after they played, I was outside talking with some people who were not into them whatsoever. These are like super hardcore dudes, And they were like, why is this metal band on this show? Their songs are too long. And I remember saying to the guy, I'm like, they really have something though. They just hit me because I'm like, of course, I'm the metal dude in the scene. They're gonna make a name for themselves. I just that's the way it came across to me. They just had the feeling of a band that was going to be like bigger and sort of be the future of something new. Because I'd first seen them in 1997 when I went to a show actually with Scott from Overcast and Colin from Death Ray Vision in Connecticut. It was throwing some old bands out, but it was Cyberchrist, Shadows Fall, before they had Phil on vocals, and Overcast. And the main reason I think Scott called me to go to the show, he gave me a ride, was because Suffocation was supposed to play, but they ended up canceling. So when Shadows Fall was actually playing, I remember I asked Scott, I said, who are they? And he said it was Matt from the Massachusetts death metal band Exhumed and John from Aftershock. So that was really cool.
That's a cool story.
Yeah. I just knew they just had something.
Yeah.
It was like, you could just feel it. Something was brewing,
Yes. Well, especially at that time, man, you nailed it, was at that time they were doing something that really wasn't done and sounds like not widely accepted within the scene. But that didn't stop them from blowing up.
Yeah, we were talking about before this episode about like melodic death metal.
Yes.
And they, on their first record, The Somber Eyes, which sounds totally different, I think, than anything they put out after that. And I remember putting that record on, I loved it. And it has a ton of melodic parts. You could tell they definitely were influenced by all the Swedish death metal, like the early Carcass, Dark Tranquility, and all that stuff. But they just had they incorporated their style with like the super heavy breakdown still too. So as they evolved, obviously they incorporated more of that too. But they had stuff that was just so uncool back then with like guitar solos and like playing like actual like riffs. They adopted the whole. You could tell they were serious. They were real metal dudes who love metal. That's why I love them.
And they sound like a metal band.
Exactly.
But they're hardcore dudes, really.
Yes, yeah, like
partially.
Yeah, I mean their bass player was in Bloodbath,
Yeah, right?
So it's like that.
How do you think? Do you think social media, not just social media, but the internet and streaming, has impacted the way we view these bands? Actually, not the way we view these bands, but the way other people. Let me back up. Let me try to explain that better. I think with streaming and the internet and things like, YouTube, people are able to see things that they weren't probably around for.
Right.
Older bands. And we see that sometimes they're starting to have a resurgence, right? So these bands seemingly out of nowhere will all of a sudden they're popular again.
Right.
It's not most of the time it's not because they're touring or putting out a new album. You know?
Right.
And so I think my point about the internet is that streaming and the internet has given access to people that previously just wouldn't have access to it. And so I think it's made it possible for people to explore these bands.
I mean, because say someone's like, you know, whatever, 17, 18 years old now, and they want to go check out Rorschach.
Yep.
You know, now they can. And they can even, you can find the craziest stuff on YouTube, like, oh, Rorschach from like 1993, playing in whatever, Detroit, Michigan, or something like that. And like, oh, this live show is amazing, or it's endless now, and which is awesome because I do it all the time too. This podcast has opened me up to a lot of like older like hardcore bands that I never have checked out. So I just go on Spotify usually and put that on.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, cool, I like this album, you know, and then it brings me down to say like you check out Circle Jerks, and next thing you know, you're checking out like an older band, the same timeline. Like, okay, then it shows you that. And so it's opened up so many doors for just like, to have access to all these bands, which I think is incredible. You know, it's like a history lesson.
It is a history lesson. Yeah.
And my point with Chalice Fall is they not only were they underrated at the time, I guess, and ahead of their time, but people didn't get it, or it wasn't their style of music, or they were like, we're in the States, like this is not metal that comes from kind of like the US. And they were like, yeah, we don't care. Like, this is what we want to play this, you know? Because like, if anyone remembers Exhumed, the Massachusetts Exhumed, is that they were death metal. Like, they sounded like old school death metal. And like Aftershock was a pretty early like metalcore band. Then you had actual hardcore like Bloodbath and stuff like, and Push Button Warfare. So it's like they didn't care. And the first Shadows Fall drummer was a jazz drummer. So you know, they just meshed all these people. And like Phil Labonte used to be in a death metal band, Perpetual Doom, back in the day. So they literally smashed all these people together. And I know John and Matt, the guitar players from Shadows Fall, are huge like 80s metal fans. So they even like incorporated that in some later stuff too. They just didn't care. You could tell they were playing what they wanted to hear, which I loved. And they were sincere. They were true. They just wanted to be this. And they didn't, I don't think they realized they were writing stuff that was ahead of their time. They just did. You know, so it was really cool to kind of watch them evolve the way they did. Like getting signed to Century Media pretty early on. And then watching, obviously, getting Brian Fair to sing from Overcast, I think changed that tremendously too. And yeah, it was a pleasure to watch them through all their stages of their career, coming up, starting off, and then growing massively, which was awesome. And seeing them now still, because they had a resurgence too. Because at the end, you know, they kind of like lost some steam and, you know, just kind of disbanded because it really kind of wasn't monetarily worth it for them to do it anymore, be away from their families. And there was other opportunities. So, you know, being back now, putting out a new record, hopefully this year, and it's like a resurgence. The shows are selling out, and they play good shows now. So it's really cool, you know?
It is cool. And I think it's hard to, you know, maintain that sort of, that momentum over a period of time as they did, you know, bands like Killswitch, as well, you know, over 20 years. That's a long time.
Super long.
To maintain a music career, you know, and it's fans, you know, it ebbs and it flows, and people's interests, and, you know, the way we consume music has changed over the years, and you know, so there's a lot of adjustment.
That's true. Actually, they actually got caught up in that, where they had to adjust the way they did things accordingly to music sales, like CD sales, because they obviously, I think the War Within sold like 400,000 in America. And it's like, then it's almost no sales because no one's buying albums.
Yes.
So
physical media.
Yeah. So
changed everything.
It's crazy. I have a question for you.
Okay.
I thought of this.
Awesome.
Because thinking about them personally and kind of a whole scene, do you think they would have become as big as they had if they hadn't have gotten Brian on vocals And if they were the only band doing that style of metal at the time, was it a joint effort between them, Killswitch, Lamb of God, that whole metalcore? If it was just them, would it have gotten as big? And if they didn't have Brian, would they be as big?
I think the addition of Brian gave them something a little extra special. I think that they complemented each other. I think it was a good addition for the band. I like Brian on vocals a lot. I think it's absolutely a joint effort because if it's just one band, sometimes they're a little. It might be easier to overlook or miss altogether.
Right.
Whereas I think a scene that's offering multiple bands, like you said, sort of not necessarily the same sound, but within the same sort of family, and it gives people more of a scene, a sub-scene to sort of attach to, as opposed to just one band. And then they can support each other, right? They don't always have to play with hardcore bands, which might have been, we talked about that might have been some of the problem in the beginning is they were just not on the right bills. But at the same time, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for them to play other types of shows.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's I don't know that any of those bands would have reached the level of success without the support of the others. At least that's just my opinion. I don't know that any one of them could.
I think I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I know people knock on it a lot, that particular style, and metalcore I think gets a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. And
it's funny, as you were talking about it, like playing with hardcore bands early on, but it's kind of a reason they're called metalcores, because they could both, them, Killswitch and other bands, can fit on a bill with metal bands, but I think also hardcore bands sometimes, where it's like they're still accepted, and that's why they kind of have both influences of metal and hardcore.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we're down the road a little bit, we're going to dig into metalcore. Deep dive. So my question for people is, who do they think is a band that is ahead of their time? What's the modern day equivalent? Or I'm sure we missed a bunch, but we only talked about a few, so I'm sure we missed a bunch.
Yeah, who do you guys think is ahead of their time? Can be bands, current bands, or I guess even bands from the past or whatever.
Other genres. Yeah. Like who did we miss?
And who did everyone else miss, do you think? And who had a resurgence, like that's kind of bigger now, that wasn't big 30 years ago?
Yeah. Speaking of 30 years ago, I wonder what our opinions would have been 30 years ago of some of these bands that we mentioned.
I know one of the bands for sure, Into Another, I didn't care for 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy.
I'm like, well, they're not heavy, so no.
And yet you were still able to make it through life for 30 years.
It's weird. I know. Barely.
I know.
Yes. It wasn't easy.
I know. I wasn't very confident, to be honest. I was under the impression that at the time, they weren't hugely appreciated. But maybe I'm totally missed. Outside of New York, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
Like the East Coast,
That's true. It's a good point.
Yeah. I could be wrong. Yeah. So, let us know what we're missing. And if you hit us with Green Day, we will not be discussing that on air, just so you know. Then we'll have to discuss whether or not you're banned from the show.
Don't make us do it.
We don't make us, yes. We have a button for that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. Join us again next week. See ya.
Later.
Two minds, no masters. Two minds, no masters.